Welcome in, live edition of the Action Network podcast. It is the NFL Sunday night recap episode, week number 2. Brendan Glasheen, joined by our Director of Research and Media at the Action Network, Evan Abrams, and Mr. Brandon Anderson, one of our NFL contributors. Those of you listening on the Action Network podcast, welcome. We are also, again, live on YouTube. Please subscribe to our channel. Like the video if you guys enjoy this recap episode. It's only our second week, but those of you joining us from last week, very much appreciated. We have a lot to get to. I'll just quick aside. I was in the chat with Brandon and Evan. I got ahead of myself. I thought the Texans were going to cover 6.5. I had to work earlier. I'm in Vegas, and I got ahead of myself. And I had the half point, 6.5, and the final score was 19-13. So I'm in a little bit of a bad mood, but these guys do a great job, and we're going to have a good show. Wild 1 p.m. window, guys. 10 games, 6 outright wins by underdogs. 6 ties the record for the most outright underdog wins in a 1 p.m. window since 2004. Crazy. Wins by 2.5, 3, 4, 6.5, 7.5, 8.5 point underdogs. If you parlay that, that's like 883 to 1. Crazy stuff. Let's try to dissect what we just saw. Caleb Williams against CJ Stroud, Sunday Night Football. Evan Abrams, why don't you lead us off here? The Bears at the Texans. The Bears end up being, they were right there at the end, but the Texans get there with the outright victory.
I think the thing you want to start with here is the fact that Caleb felt like he regressed a tiny bit in certain ways in this game. And that's even saying something given the fact that he had like 93 passing yards in his opener. He had 174 on 37 attempts today, but the A dot was pretty bad. It was about 4 last time I looked. He was 1 for 6 with 2 interceptions, 10, 15 yards downfield, it looks like by some of the data. So, I mean, overall, and this is back of napkin math right before this game just ended a little bit ago, but I believe he has a 4.1 yards per attempt through 2 starts, would be tied for the 3rd lowest of any quarterback since 1990 to start a season. It's lowest in the NFL, worse than Bryce right now, which absolutely says something. So from Chicago's point of view, I think you're truthfully lucky to be 1-1. Probably should be 0-2 based off of how Tennessee looked in week 1. The other thing that's probably noteworthy here is the fact that the Texans did get the win. They are 2-0 in the division, and the rest of the division is 0-2. That's only happened once since realignment in 2002 with the Patriots in 2007, where one team 2-0, all the other teams in the division 0-2. So a nice head start there for Houston. Game goes under tonight. Night unders 59%. I think that's probably noteworthy. And truthfully, a good stat just to give you based off this game and the hype on the Texans. So the Texans last year, 150 to 1, this year, 16 to 1 to win the Super Bowl. Massive jump year to year. They will be the only team to have that big of a jump to start 2-0 since the 2000 Rams, all going back to like the 70s. So up to the hype, Houston doing their job. I don't know if Brandon, if you had anything on this game.
Yeah, I don't know. It felt a little bit like a mid-off to me, to be honest. I didn't really feel like either team played that well, but that's kind of what the theme of Sunday was overall. We'll get into a lot of these games, but if you like points, if you like playing fantasy football, this has not been a lot of fun football for you so far coming out. Caleb Williams didn't play well. 7 sacks. This is the problem with him, is that he's holding the ball a long time. He gets the ball out quickly when he does throw, but he's trying to play Superman. And the problem is, he got no help here. The rushing game, other than Caleb Williams, ran 44 yards. Outside of that, I got 17 carries for 27 yards from the actual running back carries in the game. You know, the bummer here is that Caleb Williams literally just last week had an example of don't play like Superman. Your team can be good enough to get you the win, even without you doing that. Like, that is the thing that happened for the Bears. And then it felt like, you know, it's only a second start, but he did not have that lesson tonight. I wasn't really impressed with the Texans. Like, this is a game, like the underlying stats say that they're the much better team, but they never pulled away. They could have easily blown this game at the end. I thought they got away with like a number of uncalled, unsportsmanlike, like helmet to helmets. There was the El Shair penalty on the side that they couldn't call. There was a near pick six that looked very up for grabs. There's a lot of stuff like Houston to me. Evan, you're right. 2-0 versus 0-2 in the division. I'm not sold on Texans Island. I'm off the island. And I think this is actually setting up very nicely as a fade spot for them going forward, both in the immediate and long-term future.
Very quickly, though, next week's games, I think for both these teams, fascinating. Chicago's at Indy, basically a pick 'em, and Houston's at Minnesota. So I think you find out a lot more about these teams next week.
Agree.
Very good. Very good. Yeah. We'll get to the Vikings shortly. Let's go to our next game. Tampa Bay, outright winner, one of those outright dogs, at Detroit, 20-16. Total goes well under 51.5, 52, whatever number you got. Well under. The Lions go to 1-1. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Brandon Anderson, are 2-0 under Baker Mayfield.
They are, but man, they had absolutely no business winning this game. The Lions outgained them 463 yards to 216. Detroit made it into the red zone 7 times and only got 1 touchdown out of the mix. They got a field goal from the 3, field goal from the 17. They got the ball to the 9 before halftime and then got nothing because they accidentally had a penalty and got a runoff, so they got no points out of it. Then afterward, another field goal from the 13. They got to the 18. They threw an interception. Near the end of the game, they got to the 11, turnover and downs. And even after all that, even after all those things, they still got the ball to the 26 with 15 seconds left and still had a chance to win. But, they're down 4 because of all the other settled field goals. Had they just gotten a touchdown once anytime, they just kick the field goal and go home winners. It's a nightmare game for Detroit. Goff had an interception on his very first throw of the game. 2 picks, 55 passing attempts. That's not the formula. Like Detroit, no NFL team needs Jared Goff throwing 55 times. That's not the way. But to me, you obviously want to win if you're a Lions fan. But I think you come away almost more encouraged after this, that like you can have the nightmare scenario game against a team that like at least looks quality at the very least, the 2-0 Bucs, and you still almost won the game. Aiden Hutchinson, 4.5 sacks. Like he was an absolute monster. Have to imagine he will be one of the defensive player of the year front runners after this. To me, my takeaway here is much more about like, I think there's maybe a chance to buy a little bit on Detroit after this, that they look good. They look very good. The Bucs 2-0. I don't know. This is a pretty fluky win as much as anything on the slate today. They got a dominant quote unquote win against Washington last week, but I was a bit underwhelmed by the score of that one compared to how the game actually played out. So I think this is setting up a spot to probably fade Tampa down the line, but home against Denver next. So I think this might be a spot where they get one more. They're a touchdown favorite in that one. And then you get a 3-0 team and might be able to play to miss the playoffs or something like that. Credit where it's due. I mean, Baker showed up. Chris Godwin was good again. He's been great in the slot. But this was a Detroit win that they should have had, and they just gave it away.
Yeah, the red zone woes were pretty outrageous as far as that's concerned. But good news, they're moving the ball, and Jared Goff did have some costly turnovers. Cincinnati and Kansas City, a game that many folks had circled because of their history head-to-head, as Brandon was saying during the week on the Best Bets pod, also the roundtable earlier in the week, Burrow head. But the Chiefs get there outright 26-25. Bengals do cover the number, 6.5. Your thoughts, Evan Abrams, as it pertains to this particular game? Any more confidence, even though the Bengals are 0-2, it's familiar territory, in Kansas City 2-0. What did we learn from this game?
There's some big storylines just off the top. I mean, Pacheco on crutches after the game, obviously huge moving forward, especially with the fact that Carson Steele had a fumble today, lost. So both those things together, it's not doom and gloom for Kansas City. They're going to be fine, especially winning the game outright. But yeah, that's a worry on the next level for them, probably having to replace some people potentially week to week. We'll see. Obviously, the biggest story is the interception call or the pass interference call at the end of the game. To me, it was a penalty. I think he did bump into him, but everyone's going to point to that one as obviously Cincinnati might have won, should have won, all different types of words there. I think Cincinnati made enough plays to probably win the game. I mean, just the facts. Burrow is 1-9 straight up now in weeks 1 and 2 of the season. Hasn't started great, but played pretty well today. And as our colleague Nick Giffin's going to talk about over and over and over again, there is a problem with his wrist. There's a problem throwing downfield. There's a problem later in games. It is something with fatigue that he will probably run into week after week after week, and will make winning some of these games a little bit more difficult. But that isn't the reason they didn't win today. Let's call it. Especially interesting looking at like ADOT for both these quarterbacks. Burrow 6.8, Mahomes 3.8. Mahomes, I believe, the fewest passing yards in his career for a game that he has finished. Never had under 200 passing yards or 2+ interceptions. He did today. I guess the only positive for Mahomes, even with the win, was the fact that some downfield passing in both the first game and this game today in terms of touchdowns. He hadn't had long bomb touchdowns almost the past few years since Tyreek left, and now seeing a little bit of that downfield. Kansas City gets Atlanta next on Sunday Night Football. Cincinnati gets Washington next on Monday Night Football. So both will get prime time. So that's kind of the way I looked at it, but game kind of could have went both ways at the end there.
Mm-hmm. Hey, sorry, because I don't have an app up to tell me is that still -7? Bengals -7 next week, Washington?
Last
I think it's 7.5 last I saw.
Yeah.
Okay.
We got a Monday night doubleheader that we'll get to talk about next week.
Yeah.
Very good. Okay, New Orleans, Dallas, the Saints. I mean, what the hell? I mean, what is this like? Listen, credit to the Saints in this sense. Like, they changed their offensive coordinator. Okay, I know Dennis Allen has gotten a ton of scrutiny, but the guy's 2-0. They still have some game breakers like Alvin Kamara. If you have him on your fantasy team, you're feeling pretty good about yourself. No one considered this team. Like, I know we did the Raybon was on this, like the potential players to have like breakout seasons, if you will. I forget the exact name. I apologize. But Shaheed was one of his guys to be a breakout candidate as a compliment to Chris Olave. The Saints are 2-0 and they are scoring a lot of points, Brandon. So while we can pile on Dallas, but like I still think Dallas is a good team. At the end of the day, they're going to be fine. I think they're going to be in the mix with Philadelphia for the division in the NFC East. What do we make of the New Orleans Saints?
Man, 44-19. We talked about this one on the best bets. I said it was going to be a blowout, right?
I know, the other way.
Wrong direction on this one. Couldn't get that one much more wrong. To me, this is easily the most shocking result of the day. Just not necessarily who won, but just sheer domination. It's 35-16 at halftime. This game is over. Clint Kubiak, stand up. Offensive coordinator. They finally went out with the Pete Carmichael, 2 decades of that, and brought in a new voice. We got a lot to talk about that this week. A lot more motion, more play action, getting some easy stuff. Derek Carr just looks comfortable now, and he looked comfortable against the Dallas defense that we think is pretty good, that made the Cleveland offense look awful just a week ago. Yeah. Mike Zimmer has always been very good as a defensive coach for them, or for all of his stops. So the Saints had scored on Derek Carr possessions. So he sat out the last 2 possessions last week because they're ahead by 1 million, right? So all the other possessions last week, and then the beginning of this game, Derek Carr scored on 15 straight possessions to start the season off, which is an insane stat. Like, if you had told me Derek Carr didn't score for the first 15 possessions to start the season, I'd be like, yeah, okay, well, it's the Saints. Their line's pretty bad. Dennis Allen, whatever. Scoring on 15 possessions in a row is an absolutely incredible number. Like, we just watched the Niners and Jets do that on Monday night 8 times in a row. That's half of that. And it felt like, oh my gosh, can we just get anyone? Can you get a stop? Can we get off the field? That's twice as much here. Saints are 2-0. Bucks are 2-0 for all of our NFC South slander. I mean, they're showing up. And I think you're right, Brian. Like, to put it differently, I think this has to be about the Saints. I don't think this is necessarily even a Cowboys thing. It's going to be, it's the Cowboys. So we're going to talk about it that way. But here's some of the Saints numbers. 7.7 yards a play, ridiculous. 98th percentile success rate on offense, 99th percentile on EPA per play. They only even got 8 third downs in the game. They were 5 of 8. Didn't matter. They never made it to third down. They just kept chucking it, moving down the field. Kamara just running right through guys Dallas couldn't tackle. The Saints up next play the Eagles. Yep. Then the Falcons, we'll see what they are by then. And then at Kansas City, a Monday night game that I got to tell you, a week ago, I'd have been like, great, make plans for your Monday night. Don't have to watch that one. Looking pretty interesting right now. So if the Saints thing is real, we're going to keep finding out about it. We got Eagles, Chiefs coming up. Those are 2 Super Bowl contenders, presumably, that they need to play. maybe the Saints are Super Bowl contenders. That sounds crazy, but they certainly have been through 2 weeks. In the meantime, Dallas-Baltimore next week. We'll get to Baltimore shortly, but man, that's the big afternoon game. One of those teams going to lose, and that team is going to be in complete meltdown at either the Ravens to 0-3 or the Cowboys losing this one and that one back to back. So, that'll be next week's Sunday topic, I think.
Okay. Derek Carr, Baker Mayfield, like mid as it gets, but credit where credit is due. New offensive coordinators. The Bucs were a playoff team last year, but they changed their offensive coordinator. The Saints make a change of coordinator, and sometimes it takes time. But you're right, Derek Carr, comfortable is the word. And look, as you brought up when we did Best Bets Thursday, Dallas in so many spots at home last year was exceptional, and not just to the actual number, but winning by multiple scores, well above the number. So, like, again, week 2, early season, long year, easy to say to dump on the Cowboys, but I mean, they handled their ish at home, man. And it was just maybe they were due to not do it. So credit. Saints 2-0, Bucks 2-0, that freaking division. And then, of course, like the Saints will play Carolina whenever they play them, and it's going to be like 9-7 final score. I mean, that's coming. Anyway. Again, thanks to you that are watching on YouTube live. Please subscribe to our channel if you are watching live. That little bell, if you tap that when we go live for events like this, for shows like this, you'll get the alert when we go live. If you also want access to all of Action Pro's projections, make sure to sign up for your annual subscription that is currently on sale. Access includes every exclusive player prop picks from Sean Kerner, our other members as well of the Action Network Analytics team. You'll also get access to exclusive expert articles, our best spread, money line, and total bets, and real ticket and money percentages. To sign up, visit actionnetwork.com/pro today and use the code LIVE20, LIVE20 at sign up. One more time, that's LIVE20 at sign up for $20 off. Okay, very good. Let's move into these next wave of games. We'll move pretty quickly here. Brandon, I'll go to you first on the Ravens. So for consecutive weeks, the biggest favorite loses outright. Cincinnati week 1 to New England, and the Ravens at home, soft landing. You play a competitive game against the Chiefs. You're in Arrowhead. Everyone's having a blast. Banner night, and you lose by a foot. But by a shoe size, Kevin Durant style, Isaiah Likely, you're in that book of history as well. And the Ravens lose. The Ravens lose to the Vegas Raiders. What do you make of this, Brandon, as far as Baltimore is concerned? I want to start Baltimore. Baltimore's 0-2.
Yeah, Baltimore 0-2, I think, is the story. And that's the big story of the day. Lamar Jackson, the first MVP to start 0-2 in 22 years. You guys know how I feel about Lamar Jackson as MVP, so we'll let that speak for itself. It's not good to be 0-2. It's a long season ahead. I have an article that will come out Tuesday morning in Action Network. I talk about which of the 0-2 teams will still make the playoffs. You'll see the stat everywhere. It's like 10, 11%. It is not great news. There are, I think, 9 teams right now that are 0-2, possibly one more if the Falcons lose tomorrow. I can do the math for you. One of those teams gets to make the playoffs on average. The Bengals are 0-2. The Ravens are 0-2. Most of the AFC South is 0-2. There are a lot of teams here. You do not want to dig a hole like this to start out. The Ravens only lost 4 games all last season. So 0-2 is significant here. I said the Lions had no business losing their game. That's because they were really good and should have won. The Ravens had no business losing this game because they did not show up for this game. Like, this is not the same as the Lions. They were stuck in mud offensively. Second half, they came out, looked a little better. They go up 23-13. I got to tell you, I thought the game was over. All right, 23-13, Raiders on the road, we're good. After that, they had 10 more plays for 10 yards until the very last play when Lamar just ran up the middle and they did the whole, lateral band is on the field play, of course. During that stretch, while their offense did nothing, their defense, number 1 defense last year, remember, they allowed a 64-yard field goal drive, a 9-play 70-yard touchdown drive to tie it, and then they had a shanked punt, 24-yard punt late. Special teams, the hallmark of Ravens year after year after year. Justin Tucker missed another field goal this week. They needed it this time. They shanked the punt late. They gave up 23 yards in a field goal. It's just not Ravensy right now. The special teams, the defense, the parts of the team that have been so good is what betrayed them. And the offense hasn't been good enough. It's not looked good under Monken so far. I don't think you need to be worried just yet as far as panicking, but it's a bad loss. I think this will end up being probably one of the worst losses of the season by any team when we look back on this. For reference, for the Raiders, credit where it's due, they get the win. Here's my note on the Raiders. They averaged 1.6 yards a carry on 27 runs. This is a team that wants to run the football. They built their identity about running the football. They had 19% success rate running the football this game. They were 16% last week. The thing that their offense is supposed to do is horrendous, and they won this game anyway. That is not good for the Ravens. This is about the Ravens to me.
Next game, Seattle, New England, the Seahawks. If you got 3, as Brandon gave out as his look-ahead line, getting the -3, it got there. It got there, Brandon.
We pushed it.
Pardon me. Yeah, we got there for a push, but it could have been worse. I mean, the Seahawks have the block field goal, and then you're thinking, all right, they can come down and extend. And as it turns out, we go to overtime, and the Seahawks get there. Metcalf was outstanding, but the Patriots, like as a Patriots fan, they're hanging in there. Evan, they're kind of chipping away. It's a representable product to put the game on and think, okay, like I'll take it. But who is this more about? 23-20 your final score. Seattle, if you get the 3.5, apologies. But the minute that thing goes to overtime, and that's why we talk about the key numbers of that key number of 6. Now I know there wasn't a touchdown score, but now 6 has become a key number as opposed to the 7, right? With the overtime rules and how those implications factor in. You don't need the extra point. You get the touchdown if you win the game in a walk-off fashion. But Patriots don't get there on their first drive in overtime, and Seattle wins 23-20 in Foxborough.
I don't know how this is about New England when we know New England's not going to make the playoffs. Like they have outdone expectations to the nth degree through 2 games. They really should be 2-0, to be honest with you, based off of how they played in this game and being up and being down. This is a back and forther, but based off of the way they've played, they should be 2-0. But the story that you come away with here probably has to be Seattle, just because Geno really played great. I mean, 33 of 44, 327, he is 4th in completion percentage over expectation this season. So he's really playing great. Oh, and Seattle's 2-0. I think they are the story in this one. I think New England's playing better, which, obviously without Kenneth Walker, Seattle coming away with the win, and then they get Miami next week. So assuming they get Miami without Tua, it could be a nice 3-0 start for Seattle. So I think that's probably the story, especially when you assume leading on the pass without Walker. From the run, they were 19 of 46, 2.4 yards per carry. Terrible. And then DK and Najigba go nuts. So between the two of them, 30 targets for 22 receptions and almost 40 yards. Just crazy from Geno. So to me, that's the story. A real fun stat, which this is the game to probably use it for. So far, I believe we've had 5 300-yard passing games this season. Those teams are 2-3 straight up, 0-4-1 against the spread. So we have yet to have a cover for a guy who's thrown for 300 yards. Geno here is the push in that 0-4-1. It's been a weird year, but I think Seattle has been oddly consistent. And I think that's probably the takeaway.
Yeah, I think Seattle to make the playoffs. That's a real situation now, right? And of course with San Francisco, which we'll get to. San Francisco losing outright today to Minnesota. But no Kenneth Walker, and they prove the passing game can be formidable. That's for sure.
Yeah,
Seattle gets Miami next week also, with presumably no Tua Tagovailoa. So things coming up their way right now.
Evan, that was also a very, I'm not sure if you were trying to do this, but pretty good Barkley on your part using terrible. That was good. It was a good Charles Barkley impersonation on your part.
Thank
you. Indy, Green Bay. The Green Bay Packers, 3-point dogs at home. Matt LaFleur with Malik Willis as his quarterback. No Jordan Love. Well, the Love thing was fascinating because he was questionable. And there was like, well, will Jordan Love play? Is there a chance he would play? Love did not play. And the Green Bay Packers win outright 16-10. Another one of those outright underdogs winning in week 2. your impressions. Sorry, I'll circle back to San Francisco, Minnesota. I'll go to you, Evan, here on Indy and Green Bay. The Packers get their 16-10.
I think the stories from both sides here, like when we were talking about Seattle, New England, I don't think the stories with New England just because of their future. I think the stories from both sides here. We'll start with Green Bay. I put this stat out earlier, which I think is kind of telling. So backup quarterbacks first start as a backup when they're an underdog. Now 56% last 3 seasons. So when this new quarterback enters a system and they're basically told, spread goes the other way. It happened with Justin Fields. He was a backup in week 1. They were a dog. So 2-0 so far this season. It's just an interesting thing to look forward. Now, from the Green Bay point of view, Malik played perfect. 12 of 14, 122 yards, a passing touchdown, 6 of 41 on the ground. Could not have asked for more and went under his passing yard total, which a bunch of us were on. And it was 40 yards below that, and Green Bay still won the game. Now,
Go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say LaFleur is the other story for Green Bay. 23-11 now against spread as an underdog, and best for any coach in the Super Bowl era. But the stat that hits me even harder is 19-15 straight up as a dog. I mean, he finds a way and did a great job at controlling the clock and having the run, and just on the other side of the ball, Indy, just some wild stats, but go hit
it. Brandon, I know you had a tough day, but what I did, no, I'm just being transparent. Like one of my favorite things in the app though was the Malik Willis under 31.5 pass attempts. This is Brandon's blurb in the app. This is Brandon's. So Brandon, correct me if I'm wrong, Brandon, you don't normally give blurbs like this. Okay. I follow all you guys in the Action Network app. And if you're given a big blurb, it's normally, Raybon's given all the historical context. And this is just, which Brandon does give, but it's just the way I read it. I'm reading it in the Brandon Anderson tone. I'm sorry. WTF is this line? He's passed 50 times in 3 starts combined. It could easily get hurt running or just benched for Clifford. Slow run heavy game coming, pardon me. I would set this below 25 and still like the under. Grab the best underline you can before it plummets. But that first line was great. I'm sorry.
14 pass attempts.
I'm sorry. What TF is this line? Like you basically took how we would do podcasting over the last couple of years and it was the caption. It was like live captions during a Netflix show or something. It was fantastic. Anyway, there you go. Green Bay, another outright underdog winning today at home against Indianapolis.
And I'll give you one more there. Indy's possession, absolutely insane in their first 2 games. They have 20 minutes of possession in game 1, 19 minutes of possession in game 2. Literally not holding the ball, and Richardson is A dots like through the roof. It's like 12 right now. So chucking it downfield and just giving the ball back to the other team. But crazy to have 20 minutes or less in their first 2 games. First team to do that since Seattle in 2021, to just have 2 games in general back to back of that low possession.
San Francisco, Minnesota, Brandon, your Vikings, you got the jersey on if you're watching on YouTube. Victorious. Outright winner, another underdog outright winner over the San Francisco 49ers, 23-17. Line closed at 4. There was a 6 earlier in the week. Minnesota gets there. Kevin O'Connell, a.k.a. the tall McVay, does it. He gets the job. Do you disagree with that? I mean, I think that's kind of on point, right? Kevin O'Connell's a little underrated. He's tall McVay. And he doesn't have a beard like McVay. But anyway, outright win for the Minnesota Vikings with Sam Darnold at quarterback, the Justin Jefferson touchdown. That was one of the highlights of that 1:00 slate. Brock Purdy throws for 300 yards plus. Jordan Mason gets to 100 yards on the ground. Do we give Minnesota their flowers here, or do we get concerned about the not concerned? That's not that. I shouldn't say concerned, but San Francisco loses this game in a pretty soft landing, I think, after the Jets game.
Yeah, like they've lost to the Vikings 2 years in a row now. And last year, Trent Williams was out, Debo was out, so there were some reasons. Christian McCaffrey is out, but Jordan Mason runs 20 times for 100 yards. That's not why the Niners lost. Niners lost this game because they beat themselves. They got a punt blocked. They had 2 turnaround downs in Minnesota territory, including one that drive 15 plays, 88 yards, 9+ minutes. They get down to the 3. They go for it in 4th. Great. Love that. You're the Niners. Just punch it in. Get the game over with early. They get stopped. Give up a 97-yard touchdown to Justin Jefferson 2 plays later. Second longest in Vikings history. That's the play you're referencing. Vikings later had an Aaron Jones fumble at the 1. They could have gone up 27-7. This could have been a lot worse, actually, than the final score was. So things kind of went both ways. But Niners also had an interception on their own 13. That's an easy way to give up some points. They had a Purdy fumble in Minnesota territory. They went 2 of 10 on third down, 1 of 3 on fourth down, 2 of 4 in the red zone. This was my team total over for the week, and I'm probably going to be back on it against the Rams next week. They just are normally better than this. They made a lot of mistakes, and you know what? You're a well-oiled machine. You're welcome to make some mistakes sometime. I'd rather you do it when my money's not on you. But I think that's all that really happened is, Brian Flores brought the pressure, and I do think the if there is a concern here, and the Niners line is a concern. I think that Purdy got under some pressure, had some hurried bad throws, and to be honest, that's kind of what he does. He just usually gets away with it. This game, he took a couple sacks, made a few mistakes, and Minnesota made him pay this time. And I don't think I'm super concerned yet for the Niners, though. Injury notes from this game, I think, is probably the big story. George Kittle was hurt. Looks like cramps. He seems okay. Jefferson left after the big touchdown later on. He looks like a quad injury. He looks hopefully okay for next week. The one that maybe is not okay is Nick Bosa. He had 2 sacks this game. He looks like maybe a high ankle sprain and might miss some time. They don't have a lot of pass rush, actually, in San Francisco. They got dudes, but they've lost some of their pass rushers. So I don't love a team that is starting to lose its edge in the trenches. If the O-line is struggling, the D-line loses its DPOI guy, that's not great necessarily. So not scared yet for the Niners, but we're starting to rack up some injuries, and you take a loss here, things can turn in a hurry if they don't start getting back in the right direction.
Coming right back to you. Jets, victorious. They cover the 3.5, the 4, whatever number you got, over Tennessee, 24-17. Clean game. Aaron Rodgers only sacked twice. So it wasn't, look, I think that it's only a 1-score game, but that game felt a lot closer. The Jets were much better. They scored 17 of their 24 in the second half. Breece Hall, exceptional on the ground and in the passing game, had a big 30-yard run, had the big touchdown catch. Braylon Allen's kind of a nice compliment as well to the Jets. Brandon, Aaron Rodgers, RELAX, right? All as well.
I mean, you get the win, so I guess RELAX for at least a week. This was a tough spot for the Jets coming off a short week, back-to-back road games. Another short week coming Thursday night, again, for the home opener. So it's a tough schedule for them starting out, not necessarily opponents, but just the way the game's lined up. I gotta say, I kind of like the Titans, guys. I feel like the Titans have hung in both of these games. They should have beat the Bears last week. We know that with the defense and special teams touchdowns. This week, they're down. They end up losing by 7. They had 2 really bad turnovers. Will Levis apparently wanted to recreate the play last week and tried it again. He's going down. He tries a shovel pass that ends up going backwards for a fumble. They were up 7-0 in the red zone. They could have gone up 10-0, 14-0, and instead they give the ball back away. And then the Jets obviously end up coming back to win after that. Levis took 4 sacks. He's just making too many mistakes right now. Despite all that, despite a block punt, another special teams error, the Titans still got to the 8 with a minute left. They still could have beat the Jets in this game. They were right there. I've been the Jets guy. I've been my all-in on the Jets. They don't look great right now. They don't look terrible. They looked much better than Monday. They got the win. Credit for getting the win. Sometimes you just got to get a win. I don't come away with this being all right, cool. Well, the Jets are fine now. They took care of the Titans. I think this was a pretty coin flippy game. And importantly, you might not know this name necessarily listening. Jermaine Johnson for the Jets. He is their pass rusher, especially while Hassan Reddick is not there. Well, he's not anymore because it looks like he has a torn Achilles. He left on a stretcher, a lot of emotions. They already said as an Achilles injury. That looks bad. He was, I think, their first round pick a year or 2 ago. Hassan Reddick, you're about to get paid, my man. We're out of options. You got to get some pass rush in here. The Jets defense is built on 4-man rush, let our awesome secondary do its job, and you're out of pass rushers. So I really need to see Hassan Reddick get some green jerseys on this week. I don't know if it'll be by Thursday at this point, so they may have to go one more without him, but they got to solve that problem in a big way now with Jermaine Johnson out. I am a little worried about that defense till we get Reddick back in there.
Okay, last couple games. You got 5 to go, and then we'll get to Monday Night Football. Sentence or less. Cleveland, Jacksonville. Everyone freaked out about Deshaun Watson. Now, I thought he was pretty efficient in the first half. 18-13 Browns, outright underdog winner at Jacksonville. The Jags are 0-2. The Browns are 1-1, Brandon.
Yeah, kind of ugly. Browns 2 of 14 on third down, 100 penalty yards. I don't know that they necessarily deserve to win. Jacksonville a bit unlucky to be 0-2 so far, but just an ugly game.
Cooper Kupp injured, leaves the game. I'm so annoyed for our sake. Brandon, I tailed you on the 9+ catches for Cooper Kupp. He was the only thing going right for that Arizona team. Evan Abrams, a credit to Arizona that they get Buffalo and they get the Rams. I mean, many folks could have looked at it and said, all right, 0-2, but Kyler Murray, Marvin Harrison Jr. had his coming out party as an NFL rookie.
69 points for Arizona through two games, second most in the NFL. They've actually started hot of recent, 500 ATS or better in their first 4 games, 7 straight years, 10-4 ATS first 4 games since 2021. So they did it last year through 3 games. They were 3-0 ATS, now 2-0 and looking good. I think one of the biggest things you could probably talk about is Kyler early through the air. 20+ yards downfield, 5 of 5 in this game for 3 touchdowns. So looked really, really good. And yeah, you mentioned it, Marvin. Only 3 targets and 1 reception. Now 8 targets. Led the team in targets. So looking good there for Arizona. And they get Detroit next too. So that offense shouldn't be stopped.
Cooper Kupp seen in a walking boot. Puka's injured. Offensive line banged up. The Senate suits what Brandon was talking about, his concerns with the Rams altogether. And of course, like Matthew Stafford's still upright, but he was like the number one concern of the whole operation, just for his health. Again, not, I know the Rams were a Super Bowl team a couple years ago, but that's a real thing. Giants, Commanders, really almost a scary situation with Jaden Daniels in this game. But a low scoring game, delivers, and the Washington Commanders end up victorious, Brandon.
Yeah, the Giants lose their kicker early in this one and then end up becoming the first team in NFL history to score 3 touchdowns, allow none, and still lose in overtime, as only the New York Giants could possibly do. They go, I guess they get 0 for 3, I think, on their 2-point conversions on the touchdowns, then give up the field goal at the end. Washington, 7 field goals. Austin Seibert, I guess this is the fantasy guy that wins your league for the week. My takeaway in this game is we had 10 games at 1 p.m. How do I block a game off NFL Red Zone? I just don't need this game in my life.
Totally fair. I said the same thing, Evan, last week about Pittsburgh and Atlanta. The Arthur Smith Bowl, Pittsburgh is 2-0. Bo Nix has an opportunity down the stretch in this game. He was not very good, very below average. And the Steelers went ugly. Another under for Mike Tomlin, 13-6. Pittsburgh's 2-0.
Oh, Bo Nix is terrible. 0 passing touchdowns this year, 4 interceptions. The thing that's interesting, he's 3rd in pass attempts. So Sean Payton is letting this man chuck the ball. So that's one thing. And then Pittsburgh, 2 wins and 1 touchdown. Last team with first 2 games of the year scoring 1 touchdown or less in both games would be the 2010 Steelers. So last team to do with the Steelers now. It's just been, I'll give you 2 under stats here that were just the encapsulation of this entire game. Tomlin rode unders. We talk about all the time. 85 and 62 now, 58%, 69% since 2015. And then Denver home unders, which this works perfect. 500 or better in 9 straight years, 62% in that span since 2015. So this one was just a lot of nothing. And Justin Fields, 2-0. And Pittsburgh scored like 30 points.
Unreal. Okay. Last one in this lightning round. Chargers beat the Panthers. I'm of the belief that the NFL wanted Jim Harbaugh to have a nice soft landing to make sure that worked. 2-0 Jim Harbaugh. It keeps the AFC West compelling. Then again, the Raiders just beat the Baltimore Ravens today, but have we fully shut down this island? Like is there any remains of Panthers Island? Bryce Young had his post-game presser. Not very promising right now in Carolina, Brandon.
You're going to beat the Raiders next week. It's okay.
I mean, that's the thing. It's like the Panthers are going to continue to be the quote right side every week, but I just don't know if we can keep on doing it at this point. I'm going to call it RIP Panthers Island, time of death. I don't know if you were ever alive to start with. Like it's over. It's been over. 7 first downs for the game, 159 yards, 1 of 12 on third down, 23% success rate. I didn't even know you could go that low. That's the 0th percentile success rate, 1st percentile EPA per play, which is like a step up for them. Bryce Young had a 3 yards average depth of target, can't complete passes anyway, 84 yards on 26 attempts. It's like every number you find in this game is just horrendous and makes you want to look away. 3 points against the Chargers, really? At your home opener? Panthers Island, no more. We're done.
I'm sorry.
Not every island works out.
You've had some good, again, you've had a pretty good track record. Like you're basically Expedia and you just had one bad review.
That's good.
3.5 yards per play. I mean, good God.
That's crazy. Is 3.5 yards in week 1 and week 2. And they did 4.11 last year. So they've literally, it's gotten so much worse and consistently worse now. So I don't even,
Panthers +7 at Vegas next week. +7. Holy cow. All right. Monday Night Football. Falcons taking on the Philadelphia Eagles. I'll go to you first, Brandon. We talked about the be wary of teasers this week. And look, no A.J. Brown for Philadelphia. That was one of the big news developments of the weekend, early Sunday. No A.J. Brown in this game. Everyone knows Kirk Cousins prime time, Kirk Cousins on Monday night. Where are you at right now as we talk on this late Sunday night, early Monday morning for Falcons, Eagles, Philadelphia laying 5.5?
Yeah, boy, I can't tell you how fun it is to be the guy warning of teaser legs and upset week. And then I somehow played 3 upsets and managed to not get any of the 17 upsets that happened on Sunday. So I don't know what's coming from this game. It feels to me like you could not pay someone to bet on the Falcons, which probably means the Falcons are going to find a way to cover because that's how this thing seems to work out. We've dumped all week on Kirk Cousins, the injury, the pistol shotgun thing. Like we talked about this on every single podcast, probably. Kirk is 3 of 10 straight up in Monday Night Football. It's ugly. The Eagles, we don't really know what they are yet. They played on an ice rink in Brazil, so I don't really know what necessarily to expect of them. Kellen Moore's offense looked pretty good. Jalen Hurts, I'm not so sure he looked great in the offense just yet. So I'm kind of tiptoeing here. I'll make a pick. It's a bit of a cop-out here. Kirk Cousins is throwing an interception. It's -170. You know that's not my usual way to go. 63% implied, -170. He's got 12 interceptions in 13 Monday night games for his career. He's thrown at least one 9 out of 13 times. That's 69%. So that's in our favor here. 6 straight Monday night games with an interception, including that he's even won 3 of the last 4. Still throws a pick. I watched the game last week. He threw a lot of balls that just were kind of up for grabs. He can't plant. He can't really get a lot of zip on it. And I think the Eagles will find at least one. If you want to get a little more juice to it, 2 interceptions is +250. Don't mind that. I've watched plenty of Kirk Cousins in my life. If I got to watch him on a Monday night and he's not in my team anymore, I can at least root against him and root for the interception for once to not harm me. So I think that's the pick. For me, too, as a futures guy, things I'm looking more at, Chiefs week 3 against the Falcons. That was the hot read. I still think that's a good look. Atlanta to miss the playoffs. Maybe that Michael Penix rookie of the year look that we've talked about on the round table. I think this is a spot where if you think this goes badly for the Falcons and Kirk is cooked, I think you need to look bigger picture than just this game and kind of play something bigger long-term for it.
I'm starting to get a little annoyed at this. Like the Falcons getting credit for the Penix pick, which yeah, but you still gave Kirk Cousins the contract. So look, guys, we made this awful mistake, but look what we did. We drafted a quarterback. So like you can't bleep where you eat kind of thing. I don't know. Like just,
you also don't get credit for the Penix pick until Penix plays quarterback for the Falcons.
That
like,
too.
If Penix comes out and looks terrible, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
So
Here I am jumping the gun. Like it's already happened. Right. I'm getting them in trouble for something that hasn't happened yet. But what we do know is Kirk can't move in the pocket, but damn it. Yeah. I mean, 6 outright winners, 6 outright underdog winners today. God knows. Maybe this is it. Maybe this is the Zach Robinson's week. You're not dealing with TJ Watt, that Philadelphia Eagle. You mentioned the ice rink. Philadelphia Eagles defense, they weren't all that promising. And Jordan Love, while he played most of that game, he had the injury at the end of the game in the Hail Mary. He's not the most mobile guy himself. I mean, he can move around in the pocket much better than Kirk Cousins. I acknowledge that. But yeah. Okay. Evan, a trend to keep an eye out for. It's another primetime spot. Totals at 46.5. Are we in an under situation, or do we need to be wary of the Philadelphia defense? Not, as I just mentioned, they weren't all that sharp, and they've had more time to prepare, but no AJ Brown in this game.
Cousins actually been pretty decent in prime time, ironically enough. 7-3 straight up, only 4-6 against the spread in his last 10 starts. Obviously, the 3-10 number Brandon put out there for Monday Night Football. Everyone knows that. It's kind of everywhere. The funny thing is, he's 7-4 against the spread versus the Eagles. Best of any opponent in his career. He's had a little bit of success here when he was with Washington. But I think the one that's interesting that everyone will talk about is the spreads now. It was 6, now down to 5.5. Hurts has been really, really good. I believe he's 8-1 8-1 home prime time against the spread. So he has been really good, and now under that 6 number. The 2 bets I had was I'm going to follow Jill. I like that Jahan Dotson plus 350 with AJ Brown out. And Hurts, I think there's a chance because of the Dotson bet, I think Hurts gets a bunch of passing tries here. He's only over 1.5 passing touchdowns in 35% of his last 20 starts, 42% in his career, but 60% at home, 20% on the road. So I think there's a chance he chucks a little. So I'll look at Dotson. And the funniest thing, I was laughing when Brandon talked about that Kirk Cousins 2 interceptions, because that was the bet I wrote down. So we'll go with 2 interceptions for Cousins as well.
Before we go, the hot read, Brandon Anderson picks for next Sunday. This is, again, more of a numbers play that you're identifying now to get out ahead of it. What jumps out to you for the week 3 board?
Yeah, let's give me some numbers starting out here. Before we get to the picks today, here are the totals from week 2 so far. We had 15 games so far. Here's where we ended up on the number. We're going under on some ugly unders. So I'm going to set this up. Here's 10 games out of our 15. 41, 41, 40, 39, 36, 32, 31, 29, 26, and 19 points in NFL games so far between Thursday and Sunday. 10 of our 15 games finished at 41 or below. That's 2/3 at that number. We already have 7 games at 41 or below on the total for next week. It is ugly early, and somehow, despite the fact that I can't throw water into the ocean from Hawaii, the only thing I can hit right now is totals. So we're doing totals, and we're doing ugly totals. So let's go right to Thursday night. Patriots at Jets, under 39. This is a game where obviously we know both these teams are great at defense. They were great last year, top 10, both of them. Bottom 4, both in offense by DVOA. The Jets are supposed to not be that, but it hasn't really been so great so far. We talked about that. I think they have a nice drive or 2 each game, but they're struggling to be consistent there. This is what the Patriots do, right? They're going to defend, they're going to run the ball, they're going to shorten the game, limit mistakes, make you beat them. And maybe the Jets can do that, but I think it can still be a low-scoring game. Again, it's a tough spot, too, for the Jets. 2 road games, San Fran, then Tennessee, now a short week for the home opener. It just feels kind of like one of those ugly division Thursday night games. And we love our Thursday night unders. This is a bet that I've come back to time and again. Since 2010, Thursday unders, when the total is 40 or below, 19-7 to the under, 73%. If you go by games before December, it goes to 14-3 to the under. And if you look at just 37 to 40 point games in night games, not counting Monday. Monday doesn't work for some reason, but the rest of our primetime games, 44, 21, and 1 to the under, 68%, 84% just on Thursday nights. So this is the range you want to play an under on. These Thursday games get ugly and nasty. Looks right now like we might get some weather too, 50% rain, some wind. That only helps an under. So we'll start Thursday, under on Patriots, Jets. Brandon, how do you feel about me going under your Patriots?
No problem. No problem. Look, the other thing I was going to mention, and this is sure a take that, or an observation that no one is surprised by, but the Patriots used to do this with Belichick and Brady. September is a feeling out process, extension of the preseason. That's the league now. That's the entire league. And I think that's a reflection of your point about the totals being so low. But Jacoby Brissett's been kind of okay. As he's fulfilled his role. Now the line's held up, The Chooks Okorafor thing, it was weird this week. They elevated Michael Jordan. They're somehow keeping this thing. I thought Mike McDonald was going to get to them in this game. And the Patriots did a pretty good job. They worked in Antonio Gibson. Because I give that Seattle front. I mean, we've talked about Seattle, 2-0 Seattle. I give that Seattle team a lot of. I thought they were going to be even better in terms of throwing the Patriots off their game. But Hunter Henry over the middle was fantastic. So hopefully for Robert Saleh's sake, you take away the tight end. But look, September, this is why you can't overreact week by week the first 4 or 5 weeks of the season now, because of the preseason now is a non-factor, and September is the preseason. Especially like a guy like Aaron Rodgers, who played 4 snaps at home last year. Really, it's a good point. They haven't been home yet. Short week at home Thursday night, and we'll keep an eye on the weather. Evan, anything for you as far as a hot read or anything you're kind of looking at, something that jumped off the page as far as a number, a line, etc.?
Honestly, I kind of like the Rams, but I have to wait. I like above the 7. The look ahead there was 3. Rams look absolutely so bad today. So I was taking a look at the 7.5, and honestly, Carolina's going to stare at me all week. Because you're supposed to fade the Raiders after that spot, after winning that game against Baltimore. And now you get, it's the worst spot of all worst spots. And that should be probably the quote of the week for that Carolina game.
All right, gentlemen. I think that's it. I think we're going to get out of here.
I got one more pick, Brendan. I got one
go
more.
Ahead. Yep.
I one more ugly under for you. Giants Browns under 39. Under both of these, grab the best line you can. They're already dropping, so you may need to get a 38.5. We've done this with these games. I took Chargers Steelers under already at 37.5. That one's already dropping a little bit. When the totals are this low, you can't go low enough. Like, the books just can't set it low enough. That's what the data has told us. Browns defense obviously is the best unit in the game. They were especially nasty at home last year. Both these teams, Giants, Browns. What do we have? Suspect offensive line, really good defensive front, bad quarterbacks. That is a screaming under formula for this game. Both bottom 5 offense by DVOA last year. And I don't really feel like we've seen a lot to change that. Between their 4 games, they've been at 39, 34, and 31 points in 3 of the 4 games. So that's why this number is already in range for us. September games at 38 or below over the last decade, 11-3 to the under. We're not quite at 38, but I think this one will get there. And probably all the games we just talked about are moving that way. If it gets to 37 or below, 75% to the under since November of 2019. So that's really the goal with these hot reads. Of course, we're trying to get ahead of the number. I think all 3 of these games might end up at that 37 or below range. And the data tells us that if you feel like under anyway, like they're bumping it that low, whatever the opposite of bumping is, they're pushing it that low to get you away from betting the under. The data says just take the under anyways, that they cannot make it low enough. Do try to grab before 37 because that's a key number, but get the best you can. Another windy game looks like for Cleveland. That's not great for Watson. It is good for unders. We're just going ugly. We're going under. If this is what the NFL is right now, well, let's lean into it and make some money off of it.
To Brandon's point, the lowest total on the board today was 36.5, Pittsburgh, Denver, and there was 19 points in that game. So
now that I feel like we're in mid-season form. I mean, is there an Arctic blast? I mean, now we're just changing seasons. That what is that number again? You said in September, unders 11. What was the number? 11-3. What was that?
September games 38 or below over the last decade is 11-3 to the under, including already 4-0 to the under this season. That Pittsburgh game hit today to the under. We had that one on best bets, and we had 3 in last week that did that as well. It's ugly.
Yeah. What's real quick? Carolina, Vegas, 37.5 too.
It's another one. Yeah, there's
6 totals of under 40 next week. Right now.
It's and
Crazy.
they're gonna keep dropping because they're already all ticking down. The money's coming in on the under in all of them. So again, get the best number you can. If you want an under on these, especially the way this is trending, you got to grab it early. That's what the hot read is for.
NFL's gonna fix the preseason. Or like, fine, I don't mind. I'm not saying it doesn't have to be high flying. I don't need to all be offense, but hey, for our sake, for our purposes of the Action Network and this recap show and looking ahead, there's a way to capitalize on the market. Let's do it. I'm just thinking about the long-term future of the league. Brandon Anderson of the Action Network, one of our NFL contributors. You can listen to Brandon Best Bets episodes every Friday morning on the Action Network podcast. Evan Abrams, be on the lookout for his primer each week. When does that get released, Evan?
Like Wednesdays.
Like Wednesdays. Okay. You have a lot on your plate. I realize that.
Try to get it out for Wednesday.
Be on the lookout. Our director of research media, Evan Abrams. If you are watching on YouTube, thanks for being here. Thanks for hanging out with us late night. Please like the video on YouTube. That goes a long way for us. Also, while you hit the like button, hit the bell, subscribe to our channel. So when we go live, never mind this show is great because we go live. We're going after the Sunday night game. It's at a concrete time, but please subscribe to the channel. So when we do go live, you get alerts directly to your mobile device or however you're watching us so that you know we're live. So like the video, subscribe to the channel. And that's that. We'll be back next Sunday night to recap week number 3. For Brandon Anderson, Evan Abrams, Brendan Glasheen, thanks for watching and listening to the Action Network podcast, our NFL Week 2 recap episode. You all have a great week. We'll talk to you next weekend.